Wouldn't it be great if we had a dollar for dollar match? That every dollar that a provider put into a robust workforce development program, the state matched. So it was a real partnership between the state, not just a grant, free-flowing grant program, but something where there's a shared commitment to the staff and the individuals that are working in this space. I've been incredibly moved by what I've seen going out to group homes. And I was in a day program, the connectivity between the staff and the individuals and the execs walking around and knowing the names of every staff member and every individual that's in their programs. So when I advocate, I can tell these stories because nobody wants to hear this stuff. Nobody wants to hear the amazing things that are happening. And the truth is, people are not going into this field to make money. They're going into this field because they care about other humans.
Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. If you're leading in human services, workforce challenges aren't a theoretical issue. They're not just something that would be great to figure out someday. For most of us, they're affecting nearly every decision that's made. They're in the here and the now, and they're affecting us profoundly. Which is why I'm so excited that in today's episode, which is part one of a two-part conversation, you're going to hear from someone with a really unique vantage point on all of this. Libby Vinson is the CEO of the New Jersey Association of Community Providers. But before stepping into that role, she spent years in advocacy and lobbying, often working directly with the policymakers who are determining what happens with the laws and regulations with disabilities or human services. And what makes this conversation powerful is that Libby isn't just talking about workforce issues from a spreadsheet or a policy memo. She's been out in the programs. She's sat with staff. She's met individuals and the families. And she's wrestling with the same question that I think we're all wrestling with. We all agree on the problem, but what do we actually do about it? And without further ado, here is my conversation with Libby Vinson. You've had a front row seat to this field for years. What's one hard truth about the state of the IDD workforce that you think leaders still really aren't talking about enough?
So I would say it's really not a matter of talking. There has been a lot of discussion in Trenton, around the state, around the direct care workforce and the IDD workforce in general. But it's really the challenge is what to do about it. So there's lots of talking, but the solutions are not that there's too few, but I really think there needs to be a refocus. New Jersey has been really at the forefront of investing in wages. I had the privilege of working about 8 years ago at the beginning of the Murphy administration around direct care support, increasing direct care support wages, and that they've done that every year since then, which is great. I mean, certainly we need to pay people a fair wage, and I would say though, when you're doing wage increases, there's really never enough that's going to get them where they really need to be. So it needs to be investing in the workers and investing in what they do, who they are, provide them opportunities for growth within the organization. And I'm looking right now in this role here at NJACP on how providers can partner with the state in doing that. So that's what I'm really excited. I think everybody knows what the issue is. The biggest challenge is what to do about it. How do we encourage young people to go into these fields? There's all this discussion around AI in New Jersey. I mean, harnessing AI and investing AI, and actually New Jersey just not that long ago created an AI hub at Princeton University. So much discussion and focus is there. We should be investing the same amount of time and energy in the jobs that AI is not coming for. And it's these human service jobs that are face to face, where AI maybe could make some of these jobs a bit easier. And I think we need to explore that. But we should be investing state dollars, creating partnerships in a greater way with providers and the state, perhaps highlighting some programs that are really working well that providers have, and using those models for other providers to invest and elevate the workforce.
Awesome. I'm really excited to dive into some of those things you said, especially about the different actions and what, from your vantage point, about what it looks like to invest more in that workforce. again, something probably everyone's going to agree on out here somewhere, but what does that look like on the ground? However, before we do that, why don't you just give me a quick snapshot of your journey from, if as I understand it, right, I think you were doing either advocacy or lobbying work before. This is kind of a newer role for you, and maybe say where you're, what NJACP stands for, and what your role is there, and kind of I guess what pulled you in this work in the first place.
Sure. So I joined the New Jersey Association of Community Providers, NJACP, just about 6 months ago. So I am new in the CEO role. Prior to coming to NJACP, I did a lot of lobbying and advocacy work, really pretty much my whole adult life, and association management, some association management. And I found myself always drawn to human advocacy issues, whether it was like childcare, nonprofits, and I did some work in this space. And I had mentioned earlier there was a coalition that was created. NJACP came together with other partners in this space, the ARC of New Jersey and another trade organization, and Autism New Jersey, where there was a real misunderstanding of what, or lack of understanding, I should say, of what a direct support professional was. And so these organizations came together and formed a coalition to first educate policymakers about who DSPs are, the critical role in the community-based system, and then the need to pay them. And so I was had the privilege of running sort of that advocacy coalition, and we did that for about 5 years. And because of that, I think we got great success in investing in wages here in New Jersey. And so when that initiative was over, I really sort of thought I want to continue to work in this space. And the Council on Developmental Disabilities was interested in creating a disability caucus. And I was approached to help support that. And it was actually during COVID. And I thought, what an amazing opportunity. There's only a handful of states in New Jersey, across the country, that have a disability caucus, which really provides a forum within the legislature where they can be educated deeply on issues impacting the disability community. And so we launched that during COVID. It's a bipartisan, bicameral caucus where they get together a couple times, 4 times a year to really delve into the issues. And then certainly the work happens, the advocacy work happens between those meetings. I came to NJACBS, I think probably because I was so engaged in this work. When this opportunity came to be, I thought it'd be really interesting to step into a greater leadership role. I am a mom of 3 sons, and I can only imagine what it must be like to be a parent and be in this space. And there are so many challenges down the pipe. I mean, Medicaid cuts, and there's a bit of a shadow here in New Jersey, and I'll get into that a little bit, that's unfairly painted the provider community, where there's widespread abuse and neglect, which is not the case, although certainly any instances of abuse and neglect should not be tolerated. But there's a lot of churn that's kind of happening in the provider field. And so many would think that I'm running towards the flame, but I think that these issues are way too important, and I care about them, and I care about this community, and try to put myself in a place of what a parent or guardian must be to make those choices, and to be able to advocate and work with organizations that provide those services is a great privilege. That's why I came to this space. So I come
Hmm.
with a pretty big advocacy hat, and communications hat, and I'm certainly learning all the other facets of running associations, and I really am enjoying the challenge.
That's that's really neat. I recently was talking, and depending on when exactly this releases, it'll be a number of episodes back, but with a state provider association director who came from the provider side. So he really, like, the advocacy side was newer to him. And
Mhm.
so if this is it's actually would probably be complimentary to listen to to those. There's 2 episodes there, and to listen to these 2 episodes here would be very complimentary, because you're going to get kind of different angles, but both really looking at the provider association lens. In any case, you've been there. I think you said something like 6 months. I'm curious, what's something that surprised you most when you stepped into this role, and you're seeing the provider landscape from a slightly different view than you had before?
Would say what surprised me the most is I did have some policy foundation, but what I was surprised is what I didn't know. And I'm really never surprised that, right? It's I have when I got here, I was speaking. I think it was on a panel, and I said, I'm with NJCP. We represent a diverse community of providers. I really didn't know what that meant until I've been out in the road. And so pretty early on in this role, I decided that, the best way for me to understand the agencies and the people that make up the agencies that I represent is to go out and be with them. And so I have gone up and down this state meeting with my members. I was just at actually a provider earlier today for a grand opening of a day program, but sitting in their spaces, hearing the issues from the execs to the staff to family members to and most importantly the individuals. What is on their minds? What are the challenges that they're facing? What's working well? What's not working well? If the things that we're sort of hearing outside of the provider community, are those real things? And I came, like I had mentioned, there has been sort of this narrative around group homes that there's this widespread abuse and neglect. And so, but what I've seen, I've been incredibly moved by what I've seen going out to these spaces and sitting, going to group homes. And I was in a date program and I sat with a group of women and they were telling me about all their interests and things. And they were still at the date program and I went to their home and I asked if I could see the rooms and I was able to pick out their rooms based on the conversation that I had with them earlier in the day. The connectivity between the staff and the individuals and the execs walking around and knowing the names of every staff member and every individual that's in their programs. That has been incredibly moving to me and also really important. So when I advocate, I can tell these stories because nobody wants to hear this stuff. Nobody wants to hear the amazing things that are happening. And the truth is, people are not going into this field to make money. They're going into this field because they care about other humans. They want to be in this space where they can make a difference in someone else's lives. And so going back and sharing those real stories that I'm seeing has been incredibly important. And I think it gives me a much better understanding of the importance of the role and the seat that I'm sitting in right now. So, I mean, I could tell stories until the day come alive. They're just really profound and such a rich history also the provider community has here in this state, um, and the important role that they play not only for supporting individuals, but in New Jersey's economy. They provide jobs. They are huge vendors in this state with goods and services, and then also the support that they provide to the guardians that enables them to go back and work. And so I'm trying to get my arms around sort of the economic impact because everything is, oh, it's human services, oh, it's this, and you're coming to the state asking for money, but we have a huge impact on this state and it anchors in the community throughout New Jersey. So
Mm.
that's probably been the biggest thing that I've learned is really what it means to be a diverse community of providers.
Yeah. Yeah. The same phrase can take on a whole new life once you've, I guess, now spent 6 months on the road and
Yeah.
been able to
Ye-
see firsthand go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I wanted to add too, is that what's really been interesting is the diversity of the way in which providers deliver services or the way that they were created. Some agencies were created with a partnership where an individual, a staff member was working at a home and the connectivity between the staff member and this individual, the parents were so moved by it and their friends were moved by it that they said, you need to you need to get in a bigger space here. I don't want to lose you for my son, but your the way in which you serve needs to be replicated. And so through that, he's grown an agency in one town where he has a few group homes, and now he's moved to the next town. So everybody, I was going around this one town with him. Everybody knew him, and he was just an anchor in this space, and what he has provided those families and certainly the individuals. They are just engaged throughout these couple towns. And it was just so interesting to see that. Of course, we have, agencies that have residential programs throughout the state. And when they have schools, they serve youth. We have some smaller, the program that I was in today just opened up their first day program. And so I could see that they were so excited. There was tears of joy and there was some parents there or guardians there with their individuals walking and seeing this new space. And so that was really moving to see. And just just the different way our members are serving the needs of the individuals are so important. And the diversity makes sense also because these are individuals. It needs to be person-centered and choice-based. So I just wanted to add that. That's the other part of the diversity that now rings true. It's not just a tagline, it actually means a lot more to me by being in the space with the providers.
Yeah, and as you're getting these rich stories that aren't just like stories out there, I mean, you're witnessing this stuff firsthand. You're on your boots on the, like the guy that's the boots on the ground there in the couple towns where he started just with one individual and then it's grown from there. Um, Through all that, I know that one of the most pressing issues for providers across our whole country obviously is workforce issues, and that's the focus, really the primary focus of this podcast. I guess from your vantage point, which ones or which parts of that feel the most solvable if leaders were to focus in the right places?
Would say this. Obviously, direct support professionals, retaining and recruiting direct support for professionals and frontline supervisors. That's also a huge critical, but it's really along the whole continuum uh, throughout our human service organizations are finding a crisis. A lot of leaders are now at the age of retirement. Who's going to step into these roles? So I would think, while we can't just focus on one area, I think we do need to focus on the whole continuum of spectrum and ensure that there are opportunities if an individual wants to work as a DSP, that there's opportunities to grow within the DSP role. Or the other thing too is that we have some programs, some providers have programs where they have like tuition reimbursement, which is a wonderful benefit. But those working in this space may not have the time to apply or know how to go about it or take advantage of the tuition reimbursement or other grants that are out there for financial support. So we need to think about workforce development as part of the staff of these organizations. And so I'm seeing some programs in some of my members that are really, really interesting and yielding results. So a few of probably our larger providers, and which is also the problem, but I'll get to that in a minute, have
Yeah.
really robust programs where they have tuition reimbursement, loan redemption. I think loan redemption is key because we want young people. I think young people sitting in those seats, many of them are, I mean, how do you go to college these days? And it's just so expensive. And you think about my return on investment, which in many ways is a hindrance to going into this field because you may not make the money that you need and you're putting out all this money through it. So loan redemption, I think, is really important. Um, career laddering, mentoring, having somebody on staff. If you're in a role, you're a DSP, for example, or a supervisor or in another place, and you say to this career, maybe counselor, whoever's on staff, I want to get to this point. Can you tell me the steps that I need to take to get there? So there's a real vision for growth within these organizations. And what we're finding is that some of our members that have these really robust programs, they're having an easier time certainly to recruit people and retain these individuals. And they have a sense of commitment in a greater way to the organization. And that sense of commitment translate to high quality care for the people that they serve. So, but what I'm concerned about is we should have this throughout the system, from smaller providers to larger providers. There should be this kind of investment across the board. And what I'm sort of interested in is perhaps understanding that state dollars are limited. But again, investments are being made in other areas. We should continue to invest in the human sector that AI is not coming for. That Wouldn't it be great if we had a dollar for dollar match? That every dollar that a provider put into a robust workforce development program, the state matched. So it was a real partnership between the state, not just a grant, free flowing grant program, but something where there's a shared commitment to the staff and the individuals that are working in this space. I think that's something the state should think about, and I'm kind of looking to see if there are other models out there for such a partnership. I think if New Jersey did it, it would put us at the forefront. Here at NJACP, we do have a DSP Career Center, our grant program. The problem with it, of course, with any grant, what is the sustainability of it? And we're having some challenges looking at ways in which to sort of recreate it. And this might be the direction, I think, leaning on advocacy that we might want to go.
Yeah. That what you're saying, two thoughts come to mind. The first of all, I've seen this at the provider level from multiple conversations, and the results are so striking when there is a very significant investment in the workforce, the ROI completely outpays whatever went into that initial investment, and it's an ongoing investment. And the it's kind of it's when providers are stuck on that hamster wheel or the vicious cycle where there's high turnover. I mean, that's the most uh, I would say disincentivizing situation. Like, oh yeah, let's really invest in this person because we're sure they're going to be here in, like, 90 days. They're probably going to be gone. Like
Right.
it just creates the chicken or the egg with that whole situation. But when providers say no, we're gonna go all in on investing in staff, they might not get the ROI in year 1, but by year 5, the difference of costs related to retention and turnover, the difference in the costs related to vacancies and overtime versus if they hadn't gone that path are so dramatic. And I've heard that kind of repeatedly again and again from different providers, different sizes. But then what you're talking about then kind of taking that same principle but on a broader scale, like at the state level. Um, I am by no means an expert on this, but I do know that New York has been doing something where there's been state dollars going into, and I think actually where I'm located, PA, it's a little different, but there's some similarities too, where there's extra investment for state dollars going into providers that do uh, invest strongly and heavily in their workforce, through like a pay differential and through then like requirements around credentialing, DSP credentialing, things like this. And, I think that there's some studies that are in midst right now that haven't like data that hasn't been like published yet or released, but I can't wait for that to come out, because I think that there's no reason why something that works on the provider level wouldn't also work on the kind of the more macro or the broader level. So I'm actually really excited. And go New Jersey, like I'm all in. Yeah, guys, let's see what you guys can do. That sounds amazing.
Well,
Uh,
listen, I'm not about recreating the wheel in any ways, and I am looking at other things in states. So I'm a very data driven person. So this is exciting that there's going to be some studies to show some of the providers have looked at their programs and impact, but the data is not really long. It's just they've only had these programs for a few years, but they're already starting to see results. So
yeah,
I would say New Jersey's done a really good job in investing in wages. I mean, if you go to the legislature right now, and that's really where these decisions are made in many for every year, it's a budget battle on what gets in and what gets out, and that's very exhausting and nerve wracking, obviously, for providers and certainly the staff too that are thinking about is this year I'm going to get a raise. It depends on what the state decides in many instances, and
yeah,
so, but there have been investment in wages, which is important, but what is the next? How can we build upon that? And it's not just a one off. It's not just wages. It's not just, we also had a really robust, there was a loan redemption program that there was an investment. I think it was really COVID dollars that there was a time where if you were in the workforce, the money went up and you could apply, but it almost felt to me like it was like a lottery. Like maybe you could get it, maybe you get your information, and then
oh,
the dollars ran out. Which, if you didn't know about it, you weren't had the opportunity to apply for it. And I'm not diminishing. I think it's a great move by the state to try to offer these incentives and support for the workforce. But we might want to look at it at a more comprehensive way. So I am looking at models in other states. I certainly do not have all the answers here, but I think we need to, where it's working well, we should leverage those models and go deeper here in New Jersey, and that's what I'm hoping that we can do.
okay, yeah. No, that sounds great. I'm excited to see how that keeps playing out.
Yeah.
F When you've visited providers, this is a little bit back to maybe taking it more at the provider level again. What are there were there any this could be in the form of a story, this could be in the form of just an observation, but I'm always on a hunt. I'm on a mission, okay, for positive outliers. What are the organizations that are crushing it and doing a great job with recruitment, retention, the workforce, the culture? I mean, there's measurements you could do but there's also the feel inside the room. It's really both and. But what are you seeing that any positive outliers that stands out?
I would say the organizations. I was just on one of my visits. I was speaking with a supervisor, and she was beaming as she was speaking. And I was thinking she'd been with the organization for 15 years and more than 15 years, whatever, for well over nearly 20 years, I think. And she was talking about the empowerment that she felt within the organization, and she had ownership of what she was doing. And so that translated though throughout the house. The
Right.
GSPs that I met, the DSPs that I met at the day program, everybody felt empowered, seen, important. So it's not just investing certainly in their career development, but investing in the people who they are. And I think that starts at the top. There's this in New Jersey, there's been a lot of discussion around arbitrary executive pay caps. And so, where's the money going? People are making so much money. And the truth is that's not the case. But arbitrary salary caps to me are incredibly dangerous because I think it tells people that there's a limit to the importance of this job. That you also say to the kids sitting in college that if you go into the human service field, you know what? You're really never going to make a lot of money. And not that people go into the field to do that, but shouldn't we be saying that if you are head of an organization of these complex organizations where you have staff underneath them, shouldn't we want the best and the brightest in those seats? And I would say it matters who's in those roles. Because when I go to these organizations and I see the connectivity between the execs and the staff, and then the staff and the individuals and the execs and the individuals, that's the special sauce. Those that are in those roles and the leadership roles matter just as much as those that are certainly at the direct support professional level. So I would say the organizations that have workforce development programs, but also have a culture of respect and empowerment and giving the staff the tools to be successful in their roles, and then also investing in their health and well-being. It's really, really dangerous because we do have a shortage is is utilizing workers, over and over and over again. And the burnout rate, that's what the concern is, right? How do you balance that? And you have to have ratios, you have to have coverage. But that is I think one of the biggest concerns. How do you manage that? And how do you ensure that individual staff that are in that space, are well rested and get the care that they need? And I think that's something that many providers are doing, but I think we need to look at closer and probably elevate programs that are doing it really well and share that information in a greater way.
Do you see any, and it's okay if you, I mean, I don't know if this is immediately apparent or not. So I'm just kind of throwing a dart at this one, but we'll
Sure.
see if it sticks. Have you seen systemic things in providers that actually does create like that more of that balance, or that's able to manage that well? Like, is it, oh, they've got the best scheduling system, or oh, I mean, have you, and again, 6 months in, I'm not sure this is even a fair question, but I'm just, again, I'm on the hunt to
Yeah.
try to find what can we find that's really, that moves the needle forward and isn't just like, oh, a quote, good idea.
Nate, I would say that one of the things that I'm in this role is looking to learn more about the actual systems here at NJACP. We have constituency groups where we have peer-to-peer groups to share information, and I've been trying to be a part of those as much as possible because I sit in this role all the time I'm speaking. But what's more important for me is to listen and to hear what is working. So we do share these ideas. Interesting, I was just talking about the organization where the supervisor was beaming and she's just really, they have a sleep program protocol part of their overnight. So they have enough staff where someone can be, resting at a certain amount of time, and they have rest periods throughout. And one of one of my staff members actually is a DSP, and she kind of perked up and said that would be amazing to have. So uh, rest is incredibly important for the well-being. Think about how we operate when we aren't well rested. So I think that's really critically important. Scheduling systems, I think streamlining things is also another importance. And I would also think that the state should look at the realities of the workforce in the sense that, the HCBS rules, it's important, right? We've moved away from institutionalization, but having group homes spread out all over the state, in some pretty remote areas where, maybe it works for some, but may not necessarily work for all. I think we need to look at some housing structures that might be a little bit more innovative that could provide maybe more shared work responsibilities and things. It sort of step on those rules. Do we or do we not? But I think we need to look at that. There's one of our members has an innovative model where there are group homes sort of within an apartment building, and they're on the same floor, and the are often shared and are backup to each other. So that was really, and it works really well, and their instance rate is like incredibly low. They have support, they have backup, they have a nurse on staff because they can do that there. It's so I think we need to also look at different innovative models. It's not just about actually the workforce development, but how we set up the workforce and the structure that they're working in, the environments that they're working in. So I need to learn more about that. I know you have to be careful, right? Because we don't want to go back to institutionalization. And I'm not saying that at all, but maybe some more innovative models where individuals are closer or staff are closer to each other.
That is a very hot topic in our field right now because there when there's just simply not enough staff to go around, I mean, especially if you look at someone that's just getting multiple hours per week that's supposed to come and help them, that someone that lives more independently, for example, there's so many individuals that have all these hours that that are just go unfilled. Like, oh, you were given 20 hours a week.
Right.
It's in their individualized support plan, the funding, everything's in place for it, except there's just simply literally not people for it. And that is definitely creating that part of the challenge or the problem, I think, is creating a lot of people are like, okay, well, what can we do with resources to meet needs better? And what you're talking about is a very double-edged sword because, and I see both sides of this. I don't personally feel like super strongly. I mean, if I feel like I can really see both sides where there's, you don't want anything that starts to create this segregated community where then
Absolutely.
it feels like we're just gave up everything we gained, as a society. But then at the same time, having people um, without the actual supports that they need is not acceptable either. And so how do we bridge that gap? So yeah, no, that's a really that'll be interesting to see how our whole field, state by state and across the whole country, deals with that.
And I think, and exactly. I mean, I think whatever we do, we need to be cautious. But I also would say that this is a choice based system. And so we should have perhaps maybe some more choices in that system where
Yeah.
and when you're looking at the individuals, at least here in New Jersey, many more are coming into the system with highly acute behavioral issues. And this is something I think too with the workforce as well, is looking at those that are coming into the system and the needs that they have, and are we preparing our staff? And we have a really robust training in New Jersey, but working with those populations can be incredibly challenging. Is there something we need to be doing more for those DSPs in those spaces, or incentives for providers to invest invest in growth in that area? I mean, I think it's not just one area that we can attack. The workforce is the most important, but the workforce is impacted by all of the other factors in this space. So we need to be sort of planning for what's coming, understanding. The other thing that I think about a lot too is aging, right? We have many individuals that are home with their parents, and the boomer population is hitting. Well, emergency placements are going to be happening probably at a greater rate. So how are we prepared for that as a state? And then also aging for our population in
Sure.
place. Are we prepared in New Jersey to do that and have the staff to support individuals to age in place, with dignity and the support that they need? So there are a lot of things happening in this space, but is our structure ready for it? And I think housing is one of the areas that perhaps we might need to look at very cautiously and prudently. But I don't think we need. I think we need to look at it.
Yeah, spot on. I 100% agree with you, and that's because I come to this whole thing with a behavioral background as a behavior analyst. So, you know, someone's having a lot of challenging behaviors. I mean, that is my background, and there's a gap. At least at least in my state, and I don't think the PA is unique in that, but there seems to be a gap that, yeah, there's differential on the reimbursement rate based on like needs, like different needs, get some different rates for residential providers. But when you start talking about complex behavioral, some of that stuff, it either the differential is not enough or something needs to give because there's a small segment of the population, but there is that segment. They just burn through provider after provider because they're not set up with the staffing or the training. It's not even just like basic training. I mean, you need advanced skill set to be able to handle. I mean, these are individuals that are most likely have had multiple, law enforcement situations, and anyhow, it's a complex thing. So what you're talking about is
You
there's
know,
no
it
easy
it
solutions.
is. Yeah, there's no question, and I would say, certainly I've been going out to my members and seeing what they're doing, being in their spaces, trying to hear from them, listen to their issues. But equally important, I've also been meeting with parent advocacy groups and self-advocacy groups, individuals certainly. And there there is this perception, right, that like providers are over here and parents are over here and the state's over here. But when we're not talking to each other, where does that leave the individuals that we all care about? And so I've been trying since I came to this space is really listening also certainly to the parent advocacy groups. And I think it's important. And when we sit down around the table, there's so much more that we agree upon than we don't.
Yeah.
So focusing on the areas in which that we can really do something about. And I think there would be real widespread agreement in what you were just talking about, the highly acute, complex behaviors. What do we need to do in that space? What do we need to do more in that space, perhaps? Sometimes things happen, I think, right, where the system may not be set up to support perhaps certain and I'm not like segregating, but just are we really prepared to provide the services in the best possible way for that population? And something might happen, right? And then a legislator responds, and then they put a bill forth that would impact the whole system, which is not necessarily the whole system that needs to be impacted. I think we need to be realistic and have honest conversations about how to best serve individuals across all disabilities here in New Jersey.
Wow, so much to glean. It was kind of hard to hit pause. Now, I know I probably sound like a broken record with that. Or if you're too young to know what a broken record is, it's kind of like a 5-second TikTok video that keeps repeating. But it genuinely is hard for me to hit pause sometimes on these. There's such good content in these conversations, but I promise I'll get you part 2 of this episode next week. But in case you missed it, I want to highlight one thing that kind of came up over and over again with what Libby was sharing. The organizations that win, they're not just investing in higher wages, although that's valuable, or benefits or things along these lines, but they are investing in people, in visibility, in empowerment. They make their staff feel seen, heard, and valued over and over again. And that leads me right into an action move I want to recommend. I always try to leave you with one. Here's my action move. A way to help people feel seen, valued, and heard would be to identify one role in your organization where burnout risk is high. And maybe that's every role, but for the sake of, just pick a role and then ask one simple question. What's one thing that would make your job feel more sustainable over the next 90 days? And don't do what's so tempting to do, including for myself, which is to promise to fix everything or possibly defend the constraints of how it got that way in the first place. Instead, just listen. Take notes. See what patterns emerge. And if you want help spotting early warning signs before burnout and turnover explode, I actually have a free resource for you. It's the 7 quiet danger signs your supervisors are burning out their staff or their teams. And it's a simple way to kind of quickly assess, is burnout kind of hiding under the surface between that supervisor frontline worker or DSP relationship? And then what can you do about it? Of course, just identifying that there's a challenge there doesn't do much good unless you have a solution. So it offers some solutions as well. If you'd like to get it for free, you can. It's at iddleader.com/burnout. One more thing. In part 2 of the conversation, Libby and I go further upstream. we talk about advocacy, policy, and the hard but necessary question of how systems, funding, and leadership decisions either stabilize the workforce or quietly make it worse. And I don't think you're going to want to miss it. Well, until next time, here's to you. Keep up the amazing work.